Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Hey, Faith Positive Nation, Dr. Joey Fawcett here with another episode of Faith Positive Radio. You know, we're learning to live in a post-pandemic world. I guess we're learning. we're mostly trying to figure it out as we go along. And so it takes a whole lot of faith to learn to live in a post-pandemic world. Where some of us are being asked to physically return to work, and others of us who are Jesus followers like you and me, we're actually seeing an opportunity to physically participate as the church again in worship services. And that's pretty incredible. Of course, I'm slightly extroverted. Slightly extroverted. And so, man, I've missed people. Friend and I saw each other the other day. It's the first time in a while we were actually able to, we took it upon ourselves to shake hands and to hug. It was pretty awesome. So we're getting to do that return to church thing. And what we're figuring out is, just as work is taking on new dynamics, and what does it mean about our work culture? Is it going to be a hybrid in terms of work from home, distributed network, or is it going to be all back in office? Kind of doing the same thing with church, although church with small groups and things like that had begun to distribute somewhat prior to the pandemic. But what we're discovering is that we've begun to rethink church a bit. At least some of us have. And so as we come out of the pandemic, what does it mean to be church? And how can we, at this time, introduce some ways of doing discipleship, or some ways of being the church, acting like the church in our various communities, that the Holy Spirit is breathing into us, you know, this new wine into new wineskins now. Today's guest is going to help us think about that a lot, and has a great model, has written a book about how we can, as we reimagine church, can begin to use something that we're already experiencing in the workplace in our church. And it is, I'm convinced, the most amazing discipleship method. It's the one I think Jesus used. Today's guest thinks that Jesus used it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So what I want you to do is to just think with me about your own church and your own church experience as we're coming out of the pandemic now. So you're moving back into some sort of rhythm for weekend worship and small groups and things like that. How can we introduce the notion that you're already experiencing most likely at work, and that is coaching? How can we look at coaching for ministry and meet the many manifold myriad needs that people are having post-pandemic, so that your church can be salt and light in your local community? And my guest today is an expert in that field, in coaching as well as ministry. So when I give you the title of his book, you're going to go, duh, it's ChurchBased Ministry. And Chuck has put a link to that in the book cover on his page on our website at getpositive.today. His website is also ChurchBasedMinistry.com. So it's really easy to find my guest today. His name is Tim Cosby. I love him already. You're going to love him too. Faith Positive Nation, help me welcome to Faith Positive Radio, Tim Cosby. Tim, welcome.
Thanks, Joey. Great to be with you today and your listeners. Thank you.
Man, it's great to have you. I am thoroughly convinced that this is the time that God ordained for you to be on Faith Positive Radio, for all the reasons that I stated. We have this amazing opportunity to reimagine church now post-pandemic, and how we can meet people's needs, including our own within the church, right, in these various communities. So let's begin with a definition for us so that we understand, because we experienced, many of us have, coaching in the workplace. So what, Tim Cosby, is coaching-based ministry?
Yeah, thank you. That's such a great question. And I find that probably about 95% of the people that I talk to think they know what coaching is, but don't. So, and I know you appreciate that as a fellow coach.
Oh, I do. And let's just begin by saying it's not Nick Saban Okay. Can I just say that right from the beginning? With all deference to my friends in Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing against them, but it's a different kind of coaching. I have a really, really simple definition for coaching.
Okay.
And that is helping people to change without telling them what to do.
Helping people to change without telling them what to do.
So at the end of the day, if coaching, as you know, started out, the word came from like the late 15th century, and it was an actual coach pulled by a horse, and it would meet people where they were and take them to where they wanted to be. So that's really what coaching does. We define ministry more in terms of the process of ministry, not what it is or the outcomes, but the how of ministry. And that is the meeting people where they are and taking them to where God wants them to be without telling them what to do. And you and I both know that's the challenging part of coaching, because we're all experts. We all know the answers. We're all fixers, right? And so it's just so easy as leaders, because that's the way I was trained and you were trained too, to just be the expert, right? And so we just found that there's actually, I think, a better way, and you said it earlier, I think Jesus modeled it. There's a better way to lead people into a life of sustained transformation, because that's what we want at the end of the day. And we think that's through the approach of coaching.
So a coach doesn't tell people what to do. Well, how do they figure out what to do?
Not a good coach.
Not the kind of coach that you and I mean, right?
Yeah. And that was such a big learning for me, because this was, I started in this about 11 years ago, and I didn't really know what coaching was. And I really thought that the way people changed was if they got my expert advice, that they would just do what I tell them, right?
Sure, exactly.
Although I did have 4 children, and so I know that doesn't work that way.
Some children listen better than others. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we don't want to go down that path right now.
No. Well, from what little I understand of neuroscience, when you're telling me what to do, Tim, it's like there's a Teflon coating or Kevlar or something over a certain part of my brain, and it bounces right off, because I'm like, okay, I have to trust you a lot, right, to even try it. But most of us don't live in that kind of intimacy and trust relationship with others, even experts whom we come to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because my situation is different. You haven't worked where I work. You're not trying to be married to the person I'm trying to be married to. So if it's not telling me what to do, then what's that process that you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, it's basically, I think at the heart of it, it's formed by listening, really intense listening, which all of us as leaders struggle with, asking good open-ended questions, and then helping people to come up with their own solutions. I think at the end of the day, that's the coaching approach. So I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to believe that you're capable and competent to come up with a better solution than the one that I could give you, right? That's the mindset of coaching. Okay. And so I'm going to use questions, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to guide you in a process to figure out where you are, where you want to go, and how you want to get there. But I'm not going to give you advice. I'm going to let you come up with a solution, because I want you to own it.
Okay. So coach sounds like it's synonymous with guide.
Yeah, I think a guide, a facilitator, someone that just helps you learn, but not someone that tells you what to do. We contrast it with mentoring, because it's mostly confused, I think, with mentoring. People use those terms interchangeably.
Yeah, oftentimes.
And so what we just say is, mentoring is more about pouring in, and coaching is more about pulling out. So actually, for a person to change, you need both of those. So mentoring and coaching are both good. What we found is that most leaders are are kind of familiar with mentoring. They know how to tell people what to do. They know how to give advice, but they're not so adept at listening and helping a person come up with their own solution.
So it really sounds like it flips the tables in terms of you regard the person that you're coaching as the expert. And so
Yes.
you're guiding that person. Or perhaps another metaphor that might work is you're the midwife.
I love that term. I do.
You're
I've
not
used
actually
that
delivering the
before.
baby. You're not in labor yourself, but you're there to play
Yeah.
catch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's liken this now. We both talked about Jesus and how Jesus was an amazing coach, and of course, Laurie Beth Jones' book about Jesus Life Coach, really opened my eyes when I read that,
Yeah.
however many years ago that was, and it was not last year.
Right. Yeah.
So, talk about how Jesus used these things that you're talking about, open-ended questions, powerful questions, active listening, things like that.
Yeah. So I went through the Gospels one day, and I was just curious to know all the questions that Jesus asked. So I spent a couple days just going through the Gospels and just reading through and just writing down every question that Jesus asked. And there's about 100 of them. He asked some of them twice, if you go through all 4 Gospels.
Right.
But what I found is that Jesus was a rabbi, and the rabbinical way of learning and teaching was to ask questions. And so he was following in, I think, in that rabbinic tradition. And he just asked people a lot of questions. I think it probably drove the disciples crazy. That's just what I'm guessing.
It didn't probably. It did.
I'd like to just talk to them someday and say,
really?
How did that feel when Jesus just kept asking you, so right, where are you going to get food to feed all these people? And they're probably thinking, what are you talking about?
The master has flipped his wig. Right?
So here's what really captivated my attention, I think, in this whole thing. And that was, if anyone could give perfect advice, it would be Jesus.
Yeah.
So when someone comes to him and says, Jesus, what about this? Then if anybody should be able to give perfect advice that's never wrong, then Jesus should have been able to do that. Right? You kind of have to start there. Yeah. So my question is, why on so many occasions did he ask a question instead of telling them the answer? Right? And he asked some, I think, just some profound questions. It's like, what do you want me to do for you? Right?
Yeah. Oh, and that sounds like such a weird question. Another one is, do you want to be healed? He's asking that question of the same type of persons, persons who are paralytics and or blind or have some physical deformity. What do you want me to do for you? Do you want to be healed? I mean, it's kind of like, duh, Bart Simpson moment there.
Yeah.
But no, he asked them the question anyway. So what's the point behind those questions for the purposes of coaching-based ministry?
Well, I think if a person, if their life is going to be truly transformed, then it has to come from the inside. It has to come from them. That means they have to take ownership. So when I tell somebody what to do, if I give them advice, they're going to listen to it and go, that might have worked for you, but that's not going to work for me.
Absolutely.
But when Jesus asked questions and people had to come up with those answers, it made them think and take ownership, of their lives. And I think that's what God wants us to do with other people. And that's how we help people grow, I think.
So what does it look like in the church, coaching-based ministry, active listening, asking questions and things like that? We've experienced some of this. We know Jesus did it. We've experienced some of it at work, but let's remember we're reimagining the church as we come out of the pandemic. So in a post-pandemic church, what does coaching-based ministry look like?
Yeah. Well, I think if there was ever a time when people wanted to be noticed It's now.
Yeah.
And there's really, I think, no better way to notice another person than to come to them and ask them a question. Say, so Joey, what are your thoughts about that?
Mm.
And inside they're going, huh, they really care, you know?
Mm. Mm.
So I think that leaders in the church need to learn how to listen. Their mindset needs to be shifted so that they kind of come away from that expert-based top-down command and control kind of model that we all kind of grew up with.
Mm.
And they need to learn how to ask good open-ended questions and listen, and then help people make the changes in their lives that they want to make and how they want to make them. So I think that there's a lot of applications. I've been a pastor, I've been on staff,
Mm-hmm.
I've been a chaplain,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just interested in helping people change. And so I think that no matter what area of ministry you might be in, whether you're a pastor or a deacon or an elder or a doorkeeper or work in the nursery or work with children, whatever it is, you are interested in helping people to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
You care about their life transformation. So, what if life group leaders learned a coaching approach to lead life groups, a small group leaders kind of thing? I just feel like that's such a great application. But I think it has applications all through church ministry. And I've had a lot of pastors tell me after they've gone through our training, they said, can I bring my board through this? Because they would really benefit from this, So I
Yeah,
think there's
well,
lots of uses there.
there are, and glad to hear pastors are getting that because my hunch is that some pastors are just so glad to have people coming back to the building, right?
Yeah, right.
Get some butts back in the seats. That I mean, it's just we're so relieved. Now, how can we get things back to normal? Back to the way it used to be. But yeah, this is, as you just indicated, an amazing time to ask those open-ended questions. And yet there's somebody, I hope you're still listening to this podcast, who's saying, yeah, but what do I go to my pastor for?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What do you go to your pastor for?
You're doing that Jesus thing here,
I'm
flipping the
sorry.
question back on me, aren't you?
It's just like, it's a great question. It's like, what do you go to them for? What is it that you're really looking for? You just want answers from them? Because they could probably do that for you. But if you really want to be transformed, then I think any person that I know, an adult, a mature adult,
right.
they really want to grow and change. And if they know that the best way to grow and change is for people to help them grow and change and not just tell them what to do, then I think that should be something that would be very, very interesting to pastors, church leaders, anybody that's involved in discipling people.
So what do church-based coaching ministries look like? I mean, you've got a model and you've seen it implemented in churches. So if I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, I think our church could learn more about this and benefit. What does it look like?
Well, it's changed over the years for us because we've been trying to do this for like 11 years. And along the way, people from, corporations, CEOs and CFOs and people leaders from big organizations were in our training, and they said, hey, could you come and train my managers? Because they need to use this kind of approach. So we got kind of sidetracked, and we developed conversational management and that whole thing. But I think when we first started out, I think it was just too big to kind of chew off. It was just too big of a bite. So we've kind of pared it down to a 4.5 hour online live synchronous training with a coach where we teach the core skills of asking, listening, and helping people to design action. And we do it in such a way that when people come away from that training, they say, wow, I didn't know this. I thought coaching was something else, but this is pretty cool. And I could do this today. I could use this today.
Mm.
And man, I wish I would have had this when I started raising my kids 20 years ago, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So it's online, it's virtual, completely virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very effective. We use Zoom, and it's just working really, really well. But then it's followed up with what we call coaching practicum. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're a professional coach, and so you understand the value of this, but you
Mm-hmm.
really learn something when you're doing it, right? So you can teach the core skills and the concepts and the principles, but it's when you're actually doing it, that's when you really start learning it. So we have online coaching practicums led by a live mentor coach, where people go into breakout rooms and they coach each other, and they're evaluated, and we help them to learn how to coach better. And over a period of time, this becomes more of a habit.
Mm.
And that's really what we want to see. So that's how we're getting it into the life of the church right now. We can go to a church and do just that church. I've got a church right now that's got about 75 staff or so, and then a bunch of other leaders, and we can do, dedicated trainings just for their church, that kind of a thing. But that's how we're getting it in. That's kind of the delivery method that we're using right now.
Mm-hmm. Where does it fit into the life of the church? And my reason for
Mm,
asking that question is somebody's listening to this and they say, well, look, I'm going to church and I'm interested in coaching-based ministry, but how do we get this fit in? Because we're just glad to be back in
mhm,
doing our small groups and things.
right.
Where's my entry point
Yeah.
for getting this done?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know that I know the real correct answer to that, but my initial response would be, I think any church worth its salt has some sort of small group ministry. So yeah, they got the large group gathering, and that's
Mm-hmm.
great, but they've got more smaller, more intimate groups that meet. And I think that's where coaching-based ministry could probably have the biggest impact in a church or organization, because that's
Mm-hmm.
where, a smaller group of people are sharing life together, and they're having conversations, and coaching-based ministry is going to improve every conversation you have from now on. That's kind of the way the coaching approach works, which
Mm-hmm.
you already know. So I think that's a really, really great entry point.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually when we go into corporations, we start at the top. In fact, we
Mm-hmm.
say if your senior leadership team doesn't embrace this, then we won't even do this, because it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were coming into a Christian organization, church, whatever it is, we would really start with a core group of leaders and say, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We can give you a test drive, and you can test it and kind of drive it around the block and see what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if you guys don't embrace this, then your people are not going to embrace this either. So starting with the staff, training
Mm-hmm.
the staff, because most staff,
Okay.
they just don't know how to do this. And once they learn, they're just like, where have you been all my life? Like, I needed this a long time ago.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, because so many of them, if they did any type of ministry training at all, this was not a component of it. But it is becoming more and more popular. I think there's some seminaries and divinity schools and places like that that are introducing this into their core curriculum, and then of course excellent organizations like yours that are introducing it into church staff. So as if I'm a layperson in a church and I'm listening to this, or I'm a leader in my church, I can begin to introduce it. What I hear you saying is to someone on the staff who may be charged with discipleship, small
Sure.
groups, any
Yeah.
of those things. And that's a
Yeah.
good entry point there for us to pursue. Okay.
Yeah,
Tim
absolutely.
Tim Cosby is the author of Coaching-Based Ministry, which is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever fine books are sold. And also the website is coachingbasedministry.com. So you can go there. Tim, tell us what we're going to find when we go to coachingbasedministry.com.
Yeah, we do have some resources on the site. You can check out what I just talked about there, a test drive training.
Okay.
We found over the years that you can really talk to people until you're blue in the face about this,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't really get it. They're like, you seem like a nice guy, and this is probably pretty cool, but it doesn't really register. So we've just said, once people experience this, and they experience the paradigm shift that you have to go through, as you know, as a coach, then once they experience that, they say, well, okay, well, this is not what I thought it was. This is really pretty good. I think all of our staff could use this.
Mm-hmm.
So you could sign up for a test drive. We have an article on there, a free white paper that you can download on why giving advice doesn't work. And we found out to be pretty interesting because most of us, especially from our baby boomer generation, we just grew up thinking that advice was what an expert is supposed to give. So you can find that on there, or you can just, you can reach out to us and let's have a Zoom call or a phone call and introduce yourself and let's talk and let's see if this might be a good fit for your organization.
Wonderful. So when I go to coachingbasedministry.com, there's a contact form or something there for me to complete.
Sure is.
Okay, sweet. So I can get to Tim Cosby live and in
You
person.
can.
Awesome. That's great. Coachingbasedministry.com is the website. It's also the title of the book. And if you're walking the dog or, hey, maybe you're driving back to the office for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Or one of the first times and you're listening to this, please don't wreck. Pay attention to the dog. Don't let it chase the neighbor's cat. And just go to getpositive.today and put in Tim Cosby in the search bar and it'll take you right to his page on our website. Tim, our Faith Positive Nation always wants to hear from our guest about a favorite Bible verse or Bible passage. Obviously you're a man of scripture. You've read them all. What's a favorite of yours, man?
Yeah. Wow. I would say every day, the Lord's Prayer, the Disciples' Prayer, and Psalm 23 are just a constant, continual part of my conversation with Jesus. Yeah. So
anything particular about either the Lord's Prayer or the 23rd Psalm?
Yeah, I think the first words of Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And one day he said to me, Tim, you are not your shepherd. I am your shepherd. Yeah, and so I say that to myself like all the time. So when troubles come and questions come and anxiety comes and that kind of a thing, it's like, okay, Tim, remember, the Lord is your shepherd. The Lord who created the heavens and the earth, that's your shepherd. So take a deep breath. It's going to be okay.
Man, I appreciate your transparency there because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to figure it out. And at 3 a.m., we're looking for a shepherd because we figured out that we're not very good shepherds of ourselves.
That's right.
So that's amazing. CoachingBasedMinistry.com is the website. Coaching Based Ministry is also the book title. Tim Cosby is the man. Reach out to him through his website. Talk with some of the leaders in your congregation as you're going back post-pandemic. It's an amazing opportunity for you to reimagine church in ways that are very much in line with the way that Jesus created the church to function. So Tim, thanks so much, man. I pray God's blessings on you. Let's see, you got a wife and 4 children, right?
I got a wife and 4 children and 8 grandchildren.
8 grandchildren. Now you're bragging. Okay.
Yeah.
I pray God's blessings on all of them. Thanks so much for the gift of your time today.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.